Welcome back, Thrivers, to another awesome episode of the Thriving Equine Professional with a super cool guest coming to us today from Clovis, New Mexico. And as I always like to share, how did I meet this fantastic, young, dynamic Gen Z, Hannah Crandall? And here we are. This was a step further than just stalking someone on LinkedIn. This was actually a great recommendation from a previous guest on the podcast. So, a shout out and a thanks to Jessica Ogden for introducing me to Hannah. So, when I made the call for previous guests to give me some of their most favorite youngsters that are just rocking it out here in equine careers, Jessica shared with you and therefore shared with me the amazing Hannah Crandall. And so we're here to tell her story today. Hannah, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And that is so sweet. Like to have Jessica recommend me is just an honor. So I
Well,
love
and that's the fun part. Now that we're like, 70 some episodes into this podcast, that I can reach back out and say, okay, gang, you've told your story. Now let me, find some others that we really want to share the story. And Hannah, you were exactly what I was looking for because you're exactly what our listeners are looking for. You are a 2021 grad of Texas A&M. You graduated with a degree in ag communications and journalism. We have not really talked about that. So I want to dive right in. Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer? You wanted to be a part of ag communications, journalism? Tell us how you got there.
Yeah, so in high school, you're trying to figure out what you like, what you enjoy doing, and I loved the creative side of things, yearbook classes, journalism stuff, photography. I loved it. And I felt like I had a pretty good hand over those things. But I grew up around ag, around horses. But one of the things that I really regretted was not rodeoing myself. My family rodeoed and I just got involved in sports in a small school and I did not myself. And so I knew I wanted to find my place somehow, some way. And so when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I had in my mind like the perfect job would be writing for these magazines like Team Roping Journal, Western Horseman, things like that. And so that is what I had in my mind going to college. As far as Texas A&M, I knew I had to get away from home. I'm an hour from Tech and an hour from West Texas A&M, and I had to get away. Absolutely would have been the kind of girl to be home every weekend if I had the opportunity. So if I take away that opportunity, I can't be home every weekend. And it was the best thing I ever did. I was still able to go home for, weekends and stuff here and there, but being 8 hours away, it just put that distance there for me to become a little bit more independent and figure things out on my own. And so that's what it did. And ag communications, yeah, I knew when I went down for my visit, I really wanted to do something, ag marketing. But when you say ag marketing, they actually take that as ag business, ag economics. So when I went down for a visit, I met with an ag economics counselor advisor, and that was not where I was supposed to be. I don't do numbers. I don't like, there was no connection. Like, I knew that was not where I was supposed to be. But she kind of figured out what I was really wanting to do and pointed me over to the ag communications department. And when I went, Dr. Redwine, he wasn't there to be an advisor that day. He was just being like an hour from where I'm from. And it was the perfect connection. So that's how I ended up at A&M, and the coursework, everything was exactly what I needed to get me where I am today.
So some really great nuggets in there for our listeners because I always love to give a shout out to you've got to go visit schools, right? So you kind of knew once you get on campus and you make a few visits of different schools, a lot of times your top one, two, or three schools switch around because of how you feel once you get on campus, the experience that you have. So you talked about that. And I just feel like I have that conversation so often. I just had it like 2 days ago with a young lady, and I said, you've got to get out and visit these schools. Once you're on campus, you're going to know. You're going to have a pretty good feeling. Do you want to be there? Do you not want to be there? What do you like? What don't you like? So I love that piece of advice, Hannah. And then the other piece was that you were wise enough to say, I need to be farther away from home. And that really speaks to one of the pieces of advice that you like to give. First, you're a self proclaimed introvert. And I don't think we talk enough about that, right? So our listeners feel like, oftentimes you feel like you have to be extroverted and, for certain opportunities. And you love to talk about get comfortable being a little uncomfortable. You are a self proclaimed introvert, and you just decided some piece of wisdom in you said, you know what? I could be a real homebody, and I'm going to go ahead while I have this college opportunity, and I'm going to move 8 hours away from home. So talk to us about how that serves you has served you in just the few years you've been out of school.
Yeah, I'm definitely, like you said, a self-proclaimed introvert, especially when I was younger. If I had somebody there to talk for me, I was going to let them do all of the talking. I would never have thought that I would be doing podcasts or, talking on camera, doing, interviews and things. But I really had to step out of where I was comfortable and, break into some of that because that comes with the kind of work that I wanted to do. If I'm going to be writing these stories about these people in the industry, I've got to be comfortable having the interviews and getting those bits of information through those conversations. So I definitely have learned along the way and I've gotten more comfortable being a little bit more extroverted. I'm attracted to the people who are naturally extroverted.
Okay.
My friends in high school and college, my fiance now, they are all just out there. They are confident in it. And I have always been attracted to those people. And I think part of that is because they would do all of the talking for me. But it took a little bit. It took, me being in college and being forced into these situations and putting myself in those situations, where I had to step into a room and talk to people and get more comfortable with that. And even after I graduated, I still was not super confident in my abilities as a speaker, as, a communicator, just real life face to face kind of thing. If it was over the phone, it was easier. If it was, over email, great. But, that face to face, that took a little bit. But putting myself in situations, there's a group in Fort Worth called Cowgirls and Cocktails that one of my friends started. We network and just meet once a month and, get to talk to other women in the industry. And at that point, I don't get me wrong, I had grown a lot in my confidence as networking and communicating and things go. But I still lacked a lot. And that helped because I was forcing myself to step into those rooms and have those conversations with people who a lot of them had, way more experience than I did. And, and as a self-proclaimed introvert, you often think, oh, what are they thinking? That's one of the main setbacks is, oh, what are they thinking about me? You have that fear. And so when you realize that they're not judging you the way you think they are, that's a big step.
Yeah, so much wisdom, Hannah. Like I just really admire, and I want our listeners to hear that because, one of the other, I think, pieces of advice that you share is just what you are alluding to is that it is so easy to really kind of have that imposter syndrome. And so you talk a little bit about that and who you surround yourself with and saying yes to opportunities. So talk about the imposter syndrome since you kind of brought that up. I think that's a great lead in to your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I really regretted for a long time not rodeoing myself, not, being directly hands-on involved in, riding every day or competing or showing or, ranching, whatever that is. I did not have that direct hands-on everyday lifestyle. And so for a long time, even when I started my career at the fair and started riding more, I did not consider myself a cowgirl. I was not going to wear a cowgirl hat because in my mind, like those girls, they were cowgirls, they were handy, and that was not me. And so that also came with time and, putting myself in rooms where you feel accepted and where you feel like what you're doing is important and that just comes with putting yourself in that situation, in that space. Because once you break in to that space, all of those ladies who are in this industry, they're most of them are going to welcome you with open arms and support you in what you're doing. And so that helps with that imposter syndrome for sure. But just, it takes time to feel confident in what you're doing. And I think that was a big part of it for me, was just knowing that I had found my place. And while it looked different than what I had originally thought that might look like, where I'm at now is still a very integral part of the industry and helping preserve and promote this way of life. So,
Ah, so good. And, as you mentioned, I think we're all just continuing to hear it is the year of the cowgirl. So you go, girl. Like, that's a message that we all want to share and we want to hear. Because, Hannah, to be very honest with you, I can feel like I literally just feel exactly what you're talking about. When we say things to ourselves like, I didn't grow up in this industry, I'm not a part of it, whether it's the Western lifestyle or the thoroughbred racing industry or anywhere in between, right? Like, when we feel like we're not good enough or not enough, we're allowing the voices in our head to tell us a lie. And just to your point, when we choose the right people to spend time with, whether or not we wear a cowgirl hat or don't wear a cowgirl hat or wear square toe boots or snip toe boots or no boots at all, we are out here because we love this life. We love this lifestyle. We love to get up and speak. I say, get up and speak horse or get up and speak animal health every day. And so when you are pursuing something that you're quite that passionate about, then we have to remind ourselves that yes, imposter syndrome comes very naturally, and we have to fight that. And so that confidence that is coming through you just a couple years out of school is really impressive and totally shareable. That's why we're here today, right? We want our listeners to hear that. And speaking of cowgirls, one of the other connections that I immediately saw when I began, as I tell my listeners, stalking you, was that you are a cowgirl 30 under 30 cowgirl class of 2024. And so I've interviewed a couple of, not only I had one other guest, Katie Kleinbell from the class of 24, and then Cassie Youngener, a good friend of mine, she was a previous class. That's a pretty elite group, right? So really looking at that cowgirl 30 under 30 class of 2024, you are an amazing company there, Hannah. And that's quite an accomplishment. So let's talk a little bit about that and lead into your full-time role as the marketing and media manager for the North Texas Fair and Rodeo. So tell us about the Cowgirl 30 under 30 experience.
yeah, so Cowgirl 30 under 30, yeah, that was one of those things. It was started when I was in college, like my first year or so. And I was starting to, find other women in the industry who were doing the things that I wanted to be doing. And a lot of them that class was named. They weren't, they didn't apply. But a lot of the ladies who were named in that first class, they were ladies that I had looked up to. And I was like, oh my gosh, they just have the coolest job. They're doing these amazing things. And, ladies I just followed on social media. I had no clue who they were personally, but I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I had always had in my mind, like, eventually, I want to be that. And that Cowgirl 30 under 30 came with that. But even when I got out of school, part of the, requirement for that application for 30 under 30 is having 2 years of experience. So I definitely wanted to have a full 2 years of experience before I applied. And within that, second year of being in my career, I really focused on building a little bit more of a social media presence because as a self-proclaimed introvert, that was hard for me. Posting about my life was hard for me. And I'm still learning as I go, for a long time there, I was still just posting about my personal life. And I had a mentor who came to me and said, okay, you say you write for Western Horsemen and all these places, but I don't see that when I go look at your social media. I see you going to football games to support your family or going to ropings to support your family. So that was a really good point for me. And I've really tried to embrace that as well. So I'm definitely still learning. But for 30 under 30, once I kind of felt like I had my ducks in a row, that's when I was like, okay, I'll apply. And I also knew that I would be leaving Fort Worth, the central hub where I was able to go to all of these events and make all these connections. And so I was like, if I'm going to do it, I need to do it now. And so I was clicking. I knew a lot of the other girls who applied. And when we did not hear the announcement, like immediately the first day we thought we were going to, we're all texting, we're waiting. And Lexi Hoagland, one of the other girls in the class who started Cowgirls and Cocktails in Fort Worth, she texted me before I even saw it and said, "Oh my gosh, we got it." And so it was a huge moment. A
Oh,
lot of those girls in that class, me and Lexi and Tyler, we were all in Fort Worth. We were friends, and a lot of the alumni we were also friends with. And so it was a really special thing. I think a lot of us that had applied had felt that imposter syndrome. And, to be named this Cowgirl for Cowgirl magazine was really cool. The experience of the gala and the network after is incredible. They spoil you so rotten that weekend. And then after, we have this network of friends, and we even have a Zoom call tonight where we're going to get on and just chat about what's going on in life. And, because we're all across the country, but it's really
yeah.
cool to, keep up with each other. And yeah, 30 under 30 was one of the biggest honors for me.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'll encourage our listeners to look into that, right? And really kind of understand what the application process looks like and what, who are the alumni. You mentioned Tyler Schuster. I just listened to a podcast of hers the other day. And so it really is kind of the movers and shakers of your generation stepping into these careers in and around equine and Western lifestyle. So you wear a lot of hats, you have a lot of jobs, but let's start first, Hannah, with the media and marketing manager for the North Texas Fair and Rodeo. My guess is the North Texas Fair and Rodeo is kind of a big deal. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we're definitely not the State Fair of Texas. Sometimes we get that confusion. We're not the month-long massive, that's a different ballgame. But we are 10 days long in Denton, just north of Fort Worth and Dallas. And we have a rodeo every night. We have a concert every night. And one of the really cool things about our event is we are one of the few fairs and rodeos who we don't have a separate ticket for our rodeo admission or for our concerts. When you get in the gates for the fair, it's all still included. So that part is really cool for us, and it's really cool for me to get to promote because we really are big about preserving our Western heritage, especially in that area where Dallas and Fort Worth is growing so much. We really take pride in getting to share this lifestyle with all of these people who may not have ever experienced it before. But as far as how I came into this role, I was at Sam Houston State after I graduated from Texas A&M. I was only there for about 9 months, but I was a communications manager there. So I was just writing articles about any and all things university, everything that was going on. And it was a really good stepping point to like break into like a real big girl job, corporate kind of thing. But at the same time, it was not for me. I hate to say, I was miserable at that point in my life. And it was not just the job, but it was just like you don't realize how much more you could have until you get away from that. And so when I was looking for different jobs, my friends all knew what I was looking for and what I had hoped for. And two of my best friends from college grew up in the Denton area and grew up going to this fair. So they followed it in social media and all the things. And when they posted on Facebook that they were looking for a new marketing girl, they both sent it to me. And so that's how I ended up there. I had been interviewing for other jobs and it was just like nothing clicked. I would have an interview and they would catch me off guard with a question, or, it was just nothing was clicking right. And it was absolutely because this is where I was supposed to be. But this job is really fun. There are three of us full time, our director, our executive assistant, and then me. And so it's marketing, but it's also sometimes IT, sometimes event production. I get to do a lot of things and it's a lot of fun. It always keeps me on my toes. Now I work remotely. This past year, things in life outside of career were changing. And I loved my job. I still do. I think I have the coolest job, and I've said that from day one. But when I knew that I was going to be moving back home, Clovis, New Mexico, is about 45 minutes from where I grew up. And so I was getting engaged. Both of our families are here. I was just meant to be back home. And so I went into the office and I told my boss, our director, you know, I need to move. I love my job. And if there's any opportunity for us to make it work, great, you know. But at the same time, I still have to leave. And they were amazing about it. He was like, we would rather have you. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. And so I took about 6 months, of course, before, we made that transition. But I moved and there really has not been hardly any blips. I think we forgot to order one set of stickers this year and that was it. So it's been great. It's not super far. It's 6 hours away. I still go back once a month or so and then I'm there for the entire event. But yeah, I get to work remotely and I get to do all of the other things that I do on the side.
And again, I know that our listeners are hearing you, but there are so many things worth repeating, Hannah. And
Yeah.
one of those is where I feel like so many of us don't talk about those challenging seasons of our life. So I'm going to go back to that first 9 months right after graduation. Whether we have that immediately after graduation or whether we have it like I did, maybe about 6 or 8 years into my career, we have this 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, whatever, where you're like, who am I and what am I doing? Like, this kind of sucks. And
Yeah.
this is hard. And where am I supposed to be? Because I don't think this is it. And so I'm always quick to share we can survive anywhere for a period of time, and
Yes.
so to the story that you tell is one that I call of maturity and grit, right? You kept a job that you knew wasn't right. You were probably learning something, but you weren't excited to get up and go to work every day. And
Right.
that's going to happen. We are going to have seasons of life like that. And then, like, thanks to those two friends for sending it, thanks to, the universe, or, our good Lord for saying, okay, this one's for you. But you went through multiple interviews where that's defeating, to go
Mhm.
through interviews and have connections and to hear no or not hear back. Those things are hard.
Mhm.
And unless you have the right people in your life and in your ear, right, speaking life into you, it can become really tedious and really, hard.
Mhm.
So I just want to give you a shout out for sharing that, because I believe that the more we share those kinds of things with our young listeners and let them know that this is why we need, organizations like Cowgirls and Cocktails, right? Like, we need the right people around us to help us navigate through these seasons and what we call the roller coaster journey of life. Again, you're only a couple years into this, and you're going to have highs and you're going to have lows. And now you're going to get married. You mentioned having a fiance. You have big things going on. And then to move ahead, I also just want to ask the question, how long have you been in the marketing and media manager role with the North Texas Fair and Rodeo?
So I've been in the role 2.5 years. Our event is in August, so this was my third fair.
So this was your third fair. And the reason I asked that, Hannah, is because as you talk about going back and making this a remote position that wasn't a remote position, you didn't do that day one. You didn't do that year one. You had earned your stripes. Like, you've just completed, right, your third annual event, but you got to a point where you felt like you were worthy and you were contributing and those kinds of things before you asked for a major change like that. And I think that's a really good message to share as well. Because to your point, you knew going in, they could say no,
Mhm.
like, you could have had to say, okay, this is kind of the end of our relationship here. And that's not
Right.
how it turned out. And so, congratulations, and how exciting for you, but also for them. Everyone wins. And I just think that that's just a really incredible message to share. That's not the way it always happens.
Right.
We have to know that. But also, I think that, for us to hear and learn that when we are high contributors, we do get to ask for certain things, right?
Right. That was I mean, I know that the reason I now get to work remotely is because they trusted that I could do this job remotely. I had put in the hours and the time, I really did. And a lot of it was because I just love this industry and I love the event and what we do so much. But I went above and beyond, what was in the job description. And, during our event, I am running around like crazy. And a lot of people are like, you take your job really seriously, but I do, I love it. And so they know that and they were able to see that. And that makes a huge difference when you're asking for raises or promotions or things like this going remotely. They trusted that wherever I was still going to get the job done. And because I had done a lot of things on the road already, I was traveling back and forth, and my job has always been very, very flexible, as far as taking off, is whatever you need to do, go do. And so I'm really fortunate in that aspect because I know not every job is like that. My first job was not like that. It was very corporate and structured, but they had already seen that, when I'm gone, I still am working and I was still able to do these things from wherever I already was. So that definitely made a difference in that decision.
Good for you. Not only do your peers need to hear that and hear what goes into that, but I also believe that some of our more senior or tenured leaders also need to hear that, right? Your generation in general expects to work that way. And
Mhm.
quite frankly, as a Gen Xer, I expect to work that way. After 20 plus years in the industry, because I've been in sales roles primarily and worked remote, I am what I call spoiled about that. Like you can, I've never not gotten my job done. And so I do expect to have some sort of flexibility because in today's world, we can all work. We are going to, that's part of the life balance, right? We'll talk a little bit about that, but we're going to work. And that's the expectation, is that we're going to be able to live and work and make it all work.
Mhm.
So one of the things, Hannah, that you also shared is all the unknown opportunities. And that's a big theme for me for young people that I speak with, right? That have an interest in equine. And they think that they just are going to be either a veterinarian or a horse trainer. And if they don't want to be a veterinarian or a horse trainer, then they need to go do something else so that they can still afford to have horses.
Yeah.
So, at what point, how do we continue sharing this story and these journeys, Hannah? And why do you love to talk to people about all the opportunities that are out here that we don't know about?
But I think even in my scenario, I knew I wanted to do the writing, I wanted to do the communication, but in my mind, I pictured that role being an editor or something for one of these magazines, these publications. But when I got into it, there was so much more out there, I started to realize how many companies, or events, they had people doing their marketing for them, and some of them they have agencies doing their marketing for them. But these companies like Prefert or Smarty or, events like us or Rodeo Houston, there's all of these places around the country and these companies who have marketing roles and they need the creative people to fill them. So as far as, the creative communications marketing side, there's still so much more out there. But even past that, I did an internship in college in Billings, Montana at the Nile Rodeo. And so I was the rodeo production intern. So I was not doing, I got to help with some of the communication stuff just because they knew that that's what I was interested in and that's what I had the experience in. But I stepped into a new thing on the event production side. And now that is paying off in dividends because I'm also doing event production stuff in this marketing and media role. So there's a lot of opportunities, when you think about it. As far as, just horses go, there's jobs in these associations, whether it's a marketing director or, finance or, event production, operations. There's all these things, just like every other industry and every other company. Those jobs need to be filled, but there is a place for them in our industry too. So I think that is, the message that kids need to hear. It's not just the people who are more hands-on involved with the animals, like a vet or a horse trainer or whatever that may be. Like there are people on the back end that you have to make these events run. to make the, industry successful, whether it's, horse racing, cutting, rodeo, whatever it may be. There are jobs there that have to be filled in order to make things possible.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think you're probably the first to know that a non-horse speaking person is not the most successful horse writer. They are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to write a good story in the equine industry if they don't speak horse, quote unquote.
Yeah, because there's, lingo and things we say that other people, they don't know what that means.
Right.
And thankfully, I did grow up in the industry around these people. So I had, an idea on a lot of it, especially on the rodeo side. But, even when I broke into more of my writing on the, cutting and, ranch horse showing side, there was a lot of that. When I would go to those events, I had never really been around it a lot. I judged horses in high school, but that was it. And so knowing how those events ran and what to expect and what to watch for, that still, like, I still had to learn that. And so I think even horse people, there's still a lot to learn. But yeah, when you have these people in these roles who don't have any idea, it can be hard. I'm not saying it's impossible because there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who are just interested in our way of life. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we face right now is I talked to students just the other day at A&M, and one of the questions was, what is an issue in the ag or the industry you're in that we're facing? And I think the biggest thing is we're now getting our industry in front of people who are not involved in it, whether it's with the Yellowstone movement or, whatever it may be, Bella Hadid and Adon showing cutting horses in New York. We're getting
Yes.
our industry in front of these people.
And don't forget Hannah, Snoop Dogg. We can't not
Yes,
mention Snoop.
exactly. But we're not welcoming them in to be more involved at the same time. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing I see is when these people show an interest in it, we are many times the first to say, well, you don't know what's going on. So
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah.
We
I
don't embrace
sometimes
it and teach them.
Yes, I call it my judgmental Jodi side. Like, don't be
Yeah.
judgmental Jodi about this. Like, welcome
Right.
these
And we
people.
all do it. But
Yes,
that is one of the biggest things I see is just welcoming them in and, explaining and teaching them. And so
yes,
I think that comes to, where if these people are truly interested in the industry, why not? If we have
yeah,
people who are just looking for another job, that's a different story.
right,
And so those people probably don't belong in these horse industry jobs. But if they truly are passionate about it,
yeah,
I absolutely think those are the kind of people who are going to bring in another side, another perspective to a lot of these positions that people in the horse industry may not never even know to bring in.
yes. Oh, you're speaking words to my heart. I call it my three E's. Our responsibility always is to engage with people, educate people, and entertain people.
Yeah,
We have the ability, like that's the beauty of this lifestyle is it is engaging, it is educational, and it is entertaining. So when we embrace it in that way and bring people in and are willing to share, that is at the end of the day, I feel like all of our responsibility to do. So
absolutely.
yeah, always about the people. Now, another piece of advice, because this is one of my favorites, is you tell people to say yes.
Mhm.
Tell us why you like to tell people to say yes.
At some point, you will be able to be picky and say no. I'm just getting to that point where when it comes to freelance writing and that kind of thing, I'm to the point now where, yeah, there are things I can say no to, but in the beginning, when you're starting out, you have got to say yes to every opportunity. If it's not exactly what you want to do, it may present to be something you want to do in the future. It may present an opportunity somewhere else. My event production internship in Montana, that turned out to be one of the most beneficial things for me. I made more connections through that than probably any other internship I did. Um, and it was not something I had in mind. I then went on to get an event production certification and things like that. So say yes as far as my freelancing goes. For the longest time, any opportunity, I had a lot of people reach out on LinkedIn after I got started. When your name starts to get published,
Yeah.
other people see your name. And so when they need a writer, they reach out to you. And that's how I've gotten a lot of my freelance roles and positions. But if I had said no to any of those because it wasn't exactly what I had in mind, I would not be well versed in so many different aspects of the industry. Now I get to write about, the cutting horses and the ranch horses and, the show side of things too. I get to talk about, art in Western horsemen and all these different things. So if I had ever said no to some of those, I might not be doing all the things I'm doing right now. Now, yes, I have to be a little bit more picky because I only have so many hours in the day.
Right.
But especially in the beginning, absolutely say yes to everything.
I love that advice because I do think when you set those parameters around it and set the expectation that early on, and I used to tell young salespeople the same thing, if you will almost give up your life, and I'm not asking you to give up your life, but what I am
Right.
trying to drive home is if you will give your career 99% of yourself the first year or two, you are building your legacy. You are building your future, and you will establish your brand and who you are. And you will learn so much, not only about what you want to do, but we learn about the things that we're not all that great at. We don't really want to spend our time doing. It is actually more draining of our energy than fueling of us. So, just really wise words. Don't go through college or step away from your education being like, well, nope, that's the only thing I want to do. And that's what I'm going to do, because you're going to miss out on so, so much. And so if you'll just pour yourself into being a curious novice, right? Like you're an amateur, you're a novice, pour yourself into becoming a professional, like it will just absolutely reap dividends for you moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I would love to hit on too is when I moved off to college, I, started to have these big dreams of where could I go, what could I do? And I ended up in Fort Worth, and that was always somewhere, I could see being a really good possibility because there's so many opportunities for people who wanted to do what I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I'm back home now, but if I had not taken that opportunity to spend for those first crucial years in my career and in life away, I would not be able to do what I'm doing now from home. And I knew my fiance when we were kids, and thank goodness that it worked out the way it did because now I was able to go off and, find out where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do and make a name for myself. And he was able to do the same. And now here we are, so I think that's super important too, is in those first few years, you have to be willing to devote that time to grow before you're able to really focus on life. That will come, but where you have to worry more about work-life balance. But in the beginning, I'm so grateful that it worked out the way it did because I spent those first 2.5 years away from home still, really making those connections in the industry. If I was here, I would not have made those connections. Thank goodness I have those connections now because even 6 hours away, I'm still connected to them and what's going on. But if I had started here, it would be a very different story.
Yeah. Without a doubt. So you touched on life balance, and that is one of the questions that I ask all of my guests because especially your perspective as, a recent graduate and a dynamic young career that you are growing and all that we've just learned about you, what is one piece of advice, Hannah, that you would share with our listeners about life balance? And I call it that because I think work is part of life, right? We have all these different roles, so I tend to just call it life balance.
Yeah.
You told me you're a team roper, you're a small town coach's fiance. I want to know more about that title, right? And you are obviously a family girl. You're a dog mom. You're a runner. You're a writer. You have a lot of roles in life. And so, what is that advice that you would give us about life balance?
Yeah. So, when it comes to life now, it looks a lot different because I can do my work from anywhere and everywhere. But that also comes with its downsides and its pitfalls because I can do my work from anywhere and everywhere. So, when I'm on the road going to watch my fiance team rope or going to see family or whatever it may be, I've still got to work. I can pull my laptop out and I've got a hotspot and it still has to get done, and that also comes with, just me being me. I have a hard time drawing a line between work and life, anyways. But even now, I think it's just on another level. I'm definitely still learning how to draw that line because I am at home and I'm working and I'm able to go to the gym in the middle of the day. If I need a break because I've been working since 6:30 in the morning, I can do that. I can run up to the school for pep rallies. Like you said, I'm a small town coach's wife. So I can go up to football games. I can make the trip to every game now. Thank goodness. I can, again, go watch him rope whenever. But when I do, there's a lot of times I'm having to stop and pull over on the side of the road and do an interview or,
Yes.
whatever it may be. And that just comes with the territory, when you're doing as many different things as I am now on the freelance side of things and everything. It's hard sometimes to balance and prioritize. I am able to do these interviews in the middle of the day because I don't have a corporate structured office life, but my full-time work stuff all has to be done too.
Yes.
So, juggling it doesn't look the same as it probably does for a lot of people where they're in the office and they can get their work done and then go home and do their other work. But I'm able to do it all throughout the day. I'm able to do laundry throughout the day. So for me, I feel like life is balanced, but it's also just pure chaos. It's all the time. You do all the things. And I will say the biggest thing for me is organization. I have a calendar. I started in college with like an actual paper planner, and then COVID hit and that went out the window. So now I have everything on a Google Calendar and I have multiple calendars within my account
Yeah.
to color coordinate, but everything is in there. If somebody
Yes.
hacked into
Yes.
there, I promise you they will know every detail of my life.
Right?
And I have, just on my notes app on my phone, I keep a running list of like checklists. Okay, today I need to, send this email. I need to get this design done. I need to, schedule this or do this. And I need to vacuum. I need to, whatever.
Right.
So I'm type A and I am okay, we're checking this off, on to the next. And yeah,
Yeah. The power of systems and lists.
yes.
I don't know how any of us would do all that we do without systems and lists. And that's something that I've learned a lot about, right? And that's probably a whole nother discussion, but it is super powerful in our ability to kind of balance everything and know that we can get it all done. And then at the same time, not be overwhelmed,
Yeah.
because part of our responsibility in life balance is our own self-care in addition to our professional roles and our multiple personal roles, et cetera, et cetera. So really, really great advice from, a early career thriving equine professional.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too, like you said, getting overwhelmed. I think you also just have to accept that that's going to come with it.
Yep.
When you're doing all these things, you're going to get overwhelmed and stressed, and you just have to work through your list. And a lot of times things get better, but you have to be okay with that because
Yes.
it comes and it comes often. So
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of life balance. I don't know that life balance really exists. Like
It
I said, I
doesn't,
think
right?
it's really just chaotic.
Yeah.
But the overwhelmed and the stress that comes with it. So you just
Yes.
be okay with it and roll with it.
Yeah. Roll with it and have the right people. Have the right people.
Absolutely.
And so the other question, Hannah, that I'll ask you is, do you have a book or a podcast that you would recommend to our listeners? And if so, why?
Yeah, well, obviously, podcasts like this I love. One of my favorite podcasts is Jesse Jarvis's of Leaders of the West podcast.
Yes.
She is amazing. She is such a light in the industry, anyways, and she brings on some really cool guests, especially in, my side of things, the Western rodeo side of things,
Right.
but also just, business owners. And like there are so many cool stories on there. And it's all these people who have like these really high positions and these really cool jobs, but that are like for sure enough leaders of the West. And so I
Yeah.
think it's really cool. She does a great job interviewing them and sharing their stories and, getting advice like this too.
Yes, I love Of the West. And I'll also give a shout out to even the directory. She's got some really cool resources. She's got a webinar coming up, I think, for young people as far as interning and interviewing for your first job. So if you are not a follower of the West, go
Mhm.
check it out, because that, Hannah is exactly right. It's just such a wealth of resource for everyone in the industry, and just great opportunities that she's sharing. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she's great. She does a great job. But there's, like you said, the of the West itself, or their website and their job platform. I direct so many people, students especially. My brother's in school right now, and
Yeah.
even him who doesn't want to do the marketing, the communications, there are so many livestock type of jobs,
Yes.
ranching type of executive positions, so there's so
Yeah.
many things on there. Just I think every student should be going to take advantage of that because before there was not that. When I was
Right.
starting and looking for a job, this came out shortly after, but you had to look through the normal LinkedIn and Indeed, and our jobs are hard to find when you're doing
Yeah.
it like that, or going through everybody's social media and everybody's website.
Right.
For it to be consolidated into one place is really cool, and I think everybody should take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hannah, I think that we could continue this conversation. Like, what a delight. You said that Jesse is such a light in the industry, but there's so much light coming from you. And I appreciate you so tremendously in sharing your journey, your story, and your advice with our listeners. And so I know that we're going to have some young people that want to be in touch with you. My first answer to everyone is LinkedIn. I just continue to encourage people to go to LinkedIn, and I know you and I are connected there. How else can our listeners find you and follow you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, absolutely connect with me there. Instagram, it's just Hannah R. Crandall. And so, like I said, I'm trying to be better about posting and things. So that's one good place. But then I also have a website, hannahcrandall.com, just, my online portfolio. And so you can, email me from there as well.
Yes, hannahcrandall.com, and go follow North Texas Fair and Rodeo, right?
Yes, yes. So come visit the fair, read all these magazines. They're all doing really cool things. I'm just happy to be a part.
Yeah, you are incredible. Thank you so much for sharing and being such a thriving equine professional. We appreciate you. And until next time, Hannah, thank you so much. And Thrivers, we will see you back here, same time next week. Cheers.